Recently, I'm realizing that a lot of us are sort of caught up in the speed of life. We feel like life is coming at us fast, or everything is happening at an increased rate when it's really not. And I feel like it's really our perspective that sort of plays a role in that. Because I feel like the day you stop racing is the day you win the race. I feel like a lot of us are sort of so fixed towards our goals, towards our outcome, that we forget to exist in the present moment. I know I talk about that a lot, but I feel like that's what contributes to the speed of life. I feel like sometimes you have to slow life down with your presence enough to actually enjoy what's here. And part of that isn't necessarily saying being negligent of your goal or negligent of all that you want to achieve in your whole life, but recognizing that your greatest achievement isn't being alive. Your greatest achievement isn't being here and being able to experience those things and being able to go out and do it. But all of it starts at the present moment. And I think it's important to realize that all of it is right now. So the best thing that we can do for ourselves is sort of stop the race and stop this chase on something that, you know, is already guaranteed in a way. That is not to say like your goals are guaranteed or say don't work towards anything, but recognize that your work has to be done here. And I think in a lot of ways, rushing only makes things seem like they're going faster, when in reality, they're going at the same rate. So it's important to sort of use as much time as you can to your advantage to sort of better yourself and better your trajectory, better your steps, and make sure you're being careful with your decisions, I guess. Not to say like be indecisive and wait, because I'm realizing recently that, being decisive is something I had to or have to actively work on. And I think it's really just about understanding yourself and understanding that sometimes you have to make a choice within yourself. And I think the greatest choice that we ever make is a choice to be ourselves. And sometimes I feel like that is difficult. Not necessarily because, being yourself is difficult in a sense, but in a sense of allowing yourself to be. And I think a lot of us get into this position with the world and position with ourselves that we think that who we are is something that we shouldn't express fully, or something that we have to hide part of ourselves, or something that we feel like we can't fully trust. But I'm realizing that we trust so much in our external. We trust, you know food when we eat it. We trust, our devices. We trust other people, and we know ourselves better than anyone else. So why don't we trust ourselves? Why don't we give ourselves enough validity, strength, and security to sort of be within this present moment and be within ourselves? I feel like it really takes letting go of yourself and, I guess, allowing moments to be moments and allowing your feelings to be feelings, and not necessarily embracing separation, but embracing wholeness. Recognizing that you are more than just what you feel, you're more than just what you think. You're the reaction to all of these things in conjunction. I think the greatest thing that we can do for ourselves is influence our own reactions. Give ourselves a little bit more so we can get a little bit more. And I think that's really just about, sometimes embracing discomfort enough to make it comfortable. And I don't mean that to say going into situations that are uncomfortable and being like, well, I want this to be comfortable, so it's going to be. But allowing your definition of yourself to accommodate certain situations. I feel like, especially with myself, I'm realizing that all my discomfort is really just my association with discomfort. My association with the comfortable, what makes me feel comfortable. Like if I'm in a situation and I'm like, oh, I'm slightly uncomfortable, it's because I haven't given myself enough validity, enough space, enough security to actually be within that situation. And I think when coming into the new year, when coming into new ideas and new experiences, the unknown, whatever you want to call it, it's important to sort of let go of what was. I think a lot of us embrace our own suffering when trying to mix the past with the present. Or when we do, maybe it's unconscious, maybe it's conscious. But I feel like, regardless of which, it's important to be in the present moment. It's important to sort of let go of what was so we can embrace what has yet to be and what is. I feel like in that way we can truly build the future and truly build upon ourselves and create something new. Otherwise, we're constantly going to be repeating the past. And I think in this repetition, we don't find ourselves. We found out who we were. And I think finding out who you were has some backbone, has some validity, has some strength to it. But at the end of the day, I think all of us want to tend towards some type of betterment. I think we all want to get better, at least to a slight degree. And I think getting better has become so routine and so popularized in a way that it sort of loses its strength. I think a lot of us do things that are sort of exemplary of a good mindset, a good mental space, so we feel like we're better, or we think. But I think it's more important to have comfort within yourself than have comfort with an idea. And what I mean by that is I feel like a lot of us bolster ourselves up in our head to the point where we almost forget that we're bolstering. And that's not to say that, you shouldn't affirm yourself, but to say that sometimes our perception of ourselves is more grounded in delusion than it is in reality. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean that the reality that you pick isn't real. It's kind of hard to articulate. I feel like we all have expressions. And I feel like sometimes we get so caught up in a certain expression of ourselves, we think that one expression is us. So like if I go out into a public situation and I'm like, oh man, I'm uncomfortable, but I'm gonna overdo it. I'm gonna overwhoop it and act super confident and act super like out there. And do it to a point where I almost forget that, there's something inside of me that's still hurting, that still needs to be addressed, that still needs to be worked on in order to have that authenticity. And I think authenticity is one of the most important things. And I think that's one of the things I keep trying to do for myself is sort of build upon my foundation rather than build upon an expression. I think a lot of us get into this habit of expressing ourselves in a certain way and getting so caught up within how we're perceived that we forget we have to focus on how we perceive ourselves too. We have to focus on what's actually there and what actually needs to, I guess, be focused on to actually be mitigated and helped and healed. I'm realizing that with myself a lot. Like I feel like there are certain situations in my life where I got into this headspace or expression, or I don't know, where I was so caught up in my perception that I like bolster myself up to this crazy degree, and that affirmation I feel like wasn't truly attached to myself. I feel like real affirmation has to come from your heart and has to be felt by you. And it's not just a matter of your perception, but how you feel about yourself. And I think that's what's truly important. Because anyone can express themselves in a certain way, but I feel like coming from yourself and truly having that feeling about yourself inside makes it all the more worthwhile. Saying that it's not really about how you're perceived. It's about how you perceive yourself. It's about how you feel, and it's about doing it for you. And I feel like in that doing it for you, we find out so much more about ourselves and so much more about how to actually exist as ourselves. Because it stops being about, the race. It stops being about trying to be better than everyone, comparing yourself to everyone, but understanding yourself enough to recognize what makes you comfortable and what makes you you, what makes you significant, what makes you unique, and what makes you valuable. And 9 times out of 10, it's just your authenticity. It's just you allowing yourself to truly be prominent within the situations that you get in and giving yourself enough freedom to truly experience what a situation is. Because I feel like a lot of times we experience situations not for what they are, but what we are. And we get so caught up in being this character and having that reaction that we don't give ourselves enough room to actually create something new. And in that way, we constantly repeat the past. And I feel like that's where people unconsciously repeat what isn't resolved. By not giving themselves enough space, enough room, enough clarity, perspective, consciousness to actually make a choice that's going to lead to something different. You keep making the same choices, it's going to lead to the same outcomes. You keep asking the same questions, you're going to get the same answers. And that's why I feel like it's important to sort of realize that sometimes a question takes away the answer, and it's important to be present enough to listen. Be present enough to see the solution. I wrote something the other day. Hold on. I wrote something the other day in regards to that. I forgot what it was. Oh, running from a problem, a solution you won't see. I feel like a lot of us run from our issues. A lot of us run from what is. Not because of what it actually is, but because what we perceive it as and how we allow that to be sort of attached to our character. I feel like our fear in a lot of ways is just our inability to allow, our inability to embrace the unknown and say to ourselves that regardless of what happens, I'll still be here and I'll still love myself. I think that's the bare minimum that we should give ourselves. no matter the situation, no matter what happens, I still will have love for myself. And I feel like in that way, we can continue to move forward with what is, regardless of what happens, regardless of the fear we feel, regardless of any type of anxiety, because then it stops being about your anxiety, your fear, your perception. And it starts being about you actually just being. You actually being one with the moment and giving yourself, the necessary perspective to accommodate yourself. And I think sometimes running this race and trying to chase our outcome and trying to get to the end goal is sort of not unbefitting, but not all life is about. Life is about you getting to that, you doing that, or whatever you define. It's not just about that thing, it's about the person doing it. And I think in recognizing that your life needs to be lived by you, you give yourself more life to live. I feel like life isn't really started until you realize you're living it. And I feel like you can't really walk on your path until you realize there is a path there, until you realize that the path is truly you. It's all about your growth and development and how much you can accommodate your perspective to allow new growth and allow new things and allow yourself to sort of be molded into the right person. I feel like a lot of us wait for this right time and we try to rush to the right time because we think it's a time-based thing. Oh, I'll have this when I wait this long, or when at some time, when it's really about being the right person. I feel like in a lot of ways we attract what we are, even if you don't believe in manifestation or anything like that. I feel like we attract what we are. I feel like if we instill some type of positivity, some type of love, some type of care and affection within who we are, then that's what we're going to see in the world. That's what we're going to be more inclined to view. And I think that's purely just how our brain works. I think, the more disposed we are to negativity or seeing certain things, the more like we are to see the patterns in the real world. The more likely we are to see the patterns around us. Like, I think that's just the way our brains are disposed. Like, if you smell like a certain humidity in the air, or you look above and you see clouds, you're like, oh, it's about to rain. Because you just know that certain things link to certain things. And I think when we come at life with sort of a negative perspective and have a negative feeling about ourselves, and we view everything as that, like, oh, this happened, so it's negative, so I should feel this way. And I think we constantly cycle those loops over and over again because we fail to realize that our thoughts contribute to our perspective, which contributes to the life we live, which contributes to our thoughts. I feel like all of these things sort of loop in a cycle as long as we don't break it. And it's important to sort of break the cycle, not by overzealous force or overzealous thought, but with conscious intention and active participation in the life that we live. Slowing down life with your presence isn't just about just sitting there and being there. It's about actively allowing yourself to sort of succumb to the moment. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, but I feel like sometimes our discomfort is caused by our effort to try to get out of the situation, our effort to try to get away from whatever it is that's unfamiliar. And I don't mean this with dangerous things or immoral things. I mean this with things that are mundane and not necessarily life-threatening or mental threatening. I feel like a lot of times, even with ourselves, like we go on our phones to escape some of the thoughts in our head, or go on our phones to try to escape some of the world around us, and we rush life in that way by distracting ourselves. And it's important to sort of to put your phone down and be here. Because this is the only opportunity that we get to truly work on those things that we want to change and embrace a real, authentic sense of comfort and confidence. And all that to say, please give yourself enough to get. I think a lot of us are in this Russian headspace because, we want certain things. I think we have desires and we want them to sort of be attained as quickly as we have the desire. But I think in giving ourselves a little bit more patience and allowing ourselves to be present with ourselves and present with whatever it is that we do want, we open ourselves to getting it not only faster, but more authentically and more fulfillingly. By allowing yourself to actually put in the work and be there while you're putting in the work. So when you do gain it, it feels deserves, or at least you recognize that it's something of your creation. I think if we're going to create anything, it's important to be there while you're creating it so you don't make something that you don't actually like. And that goes with yourself. I think a lot of us are trying to build ourselves up and create ourselves and turn ourselves into something new, especially because of the new year, and without realizing that we truly have to be present with ourselves in order to choose what we want. in order to choose ourselves. So thank you for watching. If you made it this far, thank you so much. If you didn't, thank you anyway. I really do appreciate each and every one of you, and I hope you guys are taking care of yourself. All in all, keep being a friend to you. Recognize that it's you and you versus the world, not you versus you. And it's important to sort of truly recognize that you're the only one who's with you 100% of the time. So you might as well give yourself enough strength and validity and enough care that you expect from the world. So yeah, thank you.